This dark side is generally seen in us ambitious people, in the Eagles, right? It's in the Eagles. The phrase I use in the book is wild horses. The old phrase is you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. Not the wild horse.
Welcome to the Fuel Hunt Show.
What's going on, Eagles? Welcome to the Fuel Hunt Show. Today, Drew and I are joined by the world's most disciplined man. Again, Craig Ballantyne, a friend, one of the few, and a repeat guest now on the show, which is like, we should have brought a gift for you, Craig, for this.
Our first one. Our first one.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are doing me a huge favor. You're making amazing T-shirts for my event that's coming up. You have, I'm wearing one right now. This is a custom Fuel Hunt T-shirt, and I saw that you guys are doing this regularly now. So anybody that runs an event, you got 30 people coming to something. I don't know what your minimum is, but just get these really quality shirts. Like, we have people who see our mastermind members wearing them. We get messages all the time. Where can I get one of these? I'm like, nope, you can't get one. Yeah. So we appreciate you guys.
The Craig, likewise. No problem, Craig. But the Craig mantras are fire.
On fire, man, on fire. Yeah, we're doing a lot of work for major hotel chains, jiu-jitsu schools, obviously events. Like, it's been great.
What do you do for the hotel chains?
So we actually just did. So we'll do tees and shirts, hoodies, things like that. But one of the more exciting projects we just did for Lowe's Hotel, we made boxing gloves, custom boxing gloves, leather, 12-ounce boxing gloves for a women's event, leadership event. And we also assisted in setting up a ring. It was pretty cool.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So the hotel will come to you and say, hey, this person's having an event. They want some gear, but they don't know where to get it done.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of our and most of our business that we do is through referrals. It's the few people in our community that have our gear, love it, and say we want this at our school or at our event.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's no joke. These T-shirts are quality. They're comfortable, and there's in terms of buying clothes, there's not much worse when you buy a T-shirt or get given a T-shirt, and it feels like you're putting on a cardboard box, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't understand. What planet are these people coming from? Like, where do they get this cotton or whatever it is? But it's so brutal.
Yeah,
how hard can it be?
Those heavyweight cotton T-shirts though are becoming a trend now. Like the one Joey has on is a heavyweight cotton.
Yep.
And
but
you can keep your trend. You can keep your trend in America. I'm gonna wear real T-shirts up here in Canada.
We do the oversized tees right though. They're still soft. They have like a nice drape to them. Not like those ones you get. They feel like you're wearing like a burlap sack. You know what I mean?
Horrible, man.
It's terrible.
Horrible.
All right. Well, I appreciate the big up, Craig. But we are here. We are here to talk about something very important, and that is your new book, The Dark Side of Discipline. I feel like I need to. I love the title, but I feel like I need to say it with that type of intonation. Like I need to really.
Yes. That's fair. That's fair. That's very fair. Like, how else could you possibly?
Right. Exactly. So, before we get into the book. Why don't you tell the community your definition of discipline? I've said it on the show multiple times before. I think it's probably the most accurate definition of discipline that I've ever heard. So why don't we start there?
I appreciate that. And, I must have hacked it from like EOS, right? Because EOS, Entrepreneur Operating Systems, has their level 10 meeting. And, maybe that was ingrained in my brain. But eventually I just came up with this definition of discipline that keeps it simple. You have a level 10 problem in your life. First of all, you have to identify the level 10 problem. And then the ultimate definition of discipline in your life is putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem. And everything else is just entertainment. And that's really it. So, you can use the word opportunity, level 10 opportunity. In business, sometimes a level 10 opportunity comes along, and you got to put a level 10 effort into it to really leverage it. Now, it makes sense. People get it, but most people still won't do it because it is hard.
Yeah, for sure. What? So elaborate a little bit into how you chose the title of the book and what exactly the dark side of that discipline is.
Yeah. So there's a phrase that goes, "You can't write the book until you've lived the book." You can't write the book until you've lived the book. And so what that means is everything in the book. Most books are about like, hey, this is a problem. Here's how to solve it. Well, I have had all the problems. So I used to once be undisciplined, a binge drinker, regular kid who didn't really want to do too much hard work. And eventually I used discipline to become my savior, help me overcome my introverted tendencies. If you would have met me when I first met B and then met me 5 years later, you'd be like, man, that guy's a different person. And then you meet me 5 years later after that, you'd be like, man, that guy's a different person again. Always 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, whatever, as Bedros says. So discipline was my savior. But then there's a very fine line where you can swing the discipline pendulum too far. And all of a sudden, discipline becomes your enemy and it can put you in a prison. And I started seeing this in the last 5 years. Maybe I saw it before COVID, but I really started to write about it and talk about it, when everyone was kind of went through lockdown and all the weirdness and stuff. And people were just going too far. And, there's one way of going too far where the good gets in the way of the great. So you build this like 3-hour morning routine and it stops you from, writing the book that you've always claimed you want to write. Okay, so the morning routine, there's lots of good stuff in there, but it's getting in the way of the great, this book that is inside of you, deep in your soul. All right? Now, there's also a really destructive version of it, which I saw in multiple of my friends. And since I've gone on multiple shows talking about the book, I've heard this from, like Nick I can't even say his name, Nick Kuzmalatis.
Kamalatsus, yeah.
Yeah, Kamalatsus. He said the same thing, man. He's like, I wish I had this book 5 years ago when I was going down the dark side of discipline. And this dark side is generally seen in us ambitious people, in the Eagles, right? It's in the Eagles. The phrase I use in the book is wild horses. The old phrase is you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. Not the wild horse. The wild horse, the ambitious horse, you can lead it to water. It will drink all the water, snort all the oats, and it will run around until it's exhausted, trying everything. Because you and I, everybody listening, we want it all. We want to have it all. We want to do it all. We want to be the champion of it all. And I get it and I love it. But sometimes we take things too far. And everything in life, everything good in life, there can be too much of it. And sometimes everything good can kill you. You guys know that water can kill you, right? Like if you drink too much.
Of course.
You can drink too much water. And, so water is the thing that keeps us alive. But if you go too far and you drink too much water, you then dilute the sodium in your bloodstream. It messes up the electrical conduction of your heart. You basically have a heart attack. It's crazy, right? And so it's the same with discipline. And I went too far with discipline in my life. When I was really hanging around Bedros between like 2011, 2016, I had an exercise streak of 1,000 days, exercising in the weirdest places, sacrificing social time to go and keep this exercise streak going. And for what? In the end, I lost out on more than I gained. And fortunately, I didn't lose anything major in my life, but I know people who have actually had their marriages not only affected, but ended by going too far with this. They've gone and done all the challenges and they spent half their day doing that and then half their day with their head in their phone running their business. And they've neglected the great, which is their wife and their kids. And then it's over. And you just sit there and you go, oh my God, what did I do? We've all had those moments in our life where we were like, oh my God, what did I just do?
I'm in too deep. Yeah, I'm in too deep. Yeah.
And so that's the dark side. It's another imagery for it is a double-edged sword. I actually was playing around. I didn't come up with the cover idea. My publisher, Kerry Oberbrunner, did. He's an amazing dude. But I wanted to put like a sword on the front, right? Because it's a double-edged sword. It can be your lifeline, right? Like you're an alcoholic, you're overweight. A lot of people listening to this may have been in a situation where discipline was the savior, as it was for me. But then discipline can cut you back, and that's the thing that I want people to be aware of, and then I want people to customize their discipline plans, their systems, their identity, and their standards so it serves them. There's a line in the book I've gotten a lot of feedback about, which is, just saying, when you're doing all these things, ask yourself, does it serve you? Or are you serving it? And if you're serving it, you've lost your freedom and you're in the discipline prison. If the habit, the challenge, the ice bath, the working out, the jiu-jitsu, if all of that is serving you, by all means, leverage it. But if you're serving it, stop it.
For sure. So let's talk about the process of the book. So this isn't your first book, obviously. I have a staple in my library here at HQ, obviously.
Love it.
changed my life. So was the process of writing The Dark Side of Discipline any different than your other books?
Yeah, so there was a couple of things I wanted to do. I wanted to keep it shorter than the other ones because I know as a person who has 200 unread books in their house, I just do. You know, I just buy everything. I hear about a book, I buy it, and I
Same.
could probably build a second house out of books.
I
that are in my
literally, I
house.
literally 2 bookshelves to the left and right. Man, I've only read not even half.
I had that problem, and then I bought a Kindle, and it made the problem worse because now I have 200
that is
on
true.
the Kindle too, right? So
Now it's easier.
we got you.
Right. I just bought Jason Redman's new book, and I will read it, but I don't want to go into the Kindle dustbin. So first of all, the fact is that most people won't read them. Those that do will not get past the first chapter. So some of the things that me and my co-author Daniel Woodrum we thought about here is keep the book as short as possible. I was aiming for 25,000 words. I think Perfect Day is about 40,000. We got to about 26,000. We couldn't cut it anymore. The other thing is we jammed. This was advice from a guy named Vern Harnish who runs a company called Scaling Up, and he has a book called Scaling Up. It's basically his version of EOS. They're almost the same. And he said, front load the best information in your first chapter. So that's where you find the definition of discipline. I write in the book. I say you could stop reading the book at this point. You've got the most important thing. Now, of course, don't. But so there was that. The other thing was I started writing on January 1st of 2024, and I had the middle part of the book because we sell courses on effortless discipline and all this stuff. So that was obvious. And the first part of the book about the dark side was pretty clear too. But I didn't have an ending for it. So I finished the first draft in March of 2024, and then I sat on it for like 4 months, and it sucked because I just couldn't figure out how to end the book. And then my business partner and co-author Daniel Woodrum, he started doing these presentations at our events about raising your identity, raising your standards, and I was like, that's a perfect fit. And he put that in to end the book, and so we still kept it short. So I think, if somebody's thinking out there about writing a book, nailing that title, nailing that cover are really, really important for Amazon sales. Just like if you have a YouTube channel, you want to nail the cover slide. If you do a bad job on that, nobody's going to pick it up. So those things are behind the scenes for getting as many purchases as possible. I could talk your ear out for all day long about book stuff, but I'll stop there.
I did notice that the book was somewhat shorter than your others, but it also felt like the tone of it was much more direct, like much more concise. Like the value was there immediately, and I didn't have to unpack too much of it. Like you just hit us with it right away. So I did feel that when I read.
I mean, I've read my books from time to time, and I'm like, what the heck is? And I'm sure, even when the real prison sentence of writing a book is when you read the audiobook after you've sent the book to the publisher, and you're reading it and going, why is this in here? Oh my God, there's this. You find the 3 errors that still made it past 9 editors, and anyways, but I did want to make sure that there was nothing that was going to be out of time. It's going to be timeless, and so there's the hardest work of the book is cutting it down because there's a phrase by Stephen King called "kill your darlings," and this is helpful for anybody creating a course as well, or even probably for you guys for your shirts is. We have these darlings. We have these ideas, these quotes, these pages and pages of I really love what I wrote here. But if it doesn't help the reader, if the reader's going to be like, oh, this seems out of place, or if it messes up with the flow, or if it's just one of the biggest problems I had with this book is I was really repetitive in the first half, and we had to cut, and I probably have another 10,000 words where. You've got the point from what's in the book, but I sounded really funny, and because there were just some lines that, man, it was so good, but it didn't belong. So you have to kill your darlings. You have to kill the things that you think are really cool that will not help the end user, and that's very hard for most people. But that is what makes a book tight, and when the book is tight, people get through it. You can probably read it in 90 minutes. The audiobook is 2 and a bit hours. You'll go, and the thing is, now you'll consume it and you'll consume it repeatedly. And when you consume it repeatedly, first of all, it helps you, also helps me.
It's funny you mentioned that
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned Kill Your Darlings, because our first meeting with B, that was the first message he brought up to us, the first bit of advice.
Oh, really?
Because I do believe it applies to all areas of life and business, because we had our strategy when we started Fuel Hunt was keep everything in stock all the time, because everything we create and come up with as far as shirts and rash guards go, we love them. We fall in love with everything we create as
babies, man.
as authors or course creators do. But we were basically spending all of our money restocking everything when only half of the stuff was selling. So that was,
and then you forget about it. Like, you know, when I read the book, I didn't think anything was missing. You know, I've got all the files of the old stuff, and I've totally forgotten what I've written. So when you do it, you have to have the courage to do it, or you have to have an editor who's going to force you to do it. But when you do that, it makes your message tighter. And when your message is tight, it's repeatable, right? Like, think about all this, a lot of the stuff that Bedros says. It is repeatable. It is tight. And I've always said that, like, most of the stuff that I write in my books, I send out in a newsletter to my coaching clients first. And that newsletter is like Chris Rock going into a dingy comedy club in New York City and trying the joke for the first time, seeing the crowd's reaction and going, oh, I see, I needed to pause, throw in 3 more F words, and I'm going to try that again next week at a different place. Oh, better reaction. I'm going to try this. Whoa, horrible reaction. Back to the original. Okay, this goes in the Netflix special. Now I do that, you know, for 30 more times, and I've got an hour of content that's tight and is going to get me $15 million or whatever it is for a Netflix special.
Yeah, and it's your most valuable stuff. You know, in the Perfect Day Formula, in your book, The Perfect Day Formula, you say, one of the things that's always stuck with me, you say action begets action.
Yeah, totally, man.
And in what you just said now, it's funny because I almost feel like consistency begets the consistency. If your reader can consistently read that book, right, and take in that message and repeat it over and over, they themselves will get more consistent in applying it to their lives, you know?
Yeah. And who's going to share the book more? The person who got through the book.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Absolutely.
So you said a couple things. Drew, thanks for mentioning the Kill Your Darlings thing, because I did want to shout out B there, since that was like the first piece of wisdom he ever gave us.
And then one other thing, Craig, you mentioned like how you would go back and read and you would be like, what was I thinking, or what was I doing when I was writing this? But I find that the more we write for the Fuel Hunt page and the more we write for our blogs, it's important to not let the good be the enemy of the great, because no matter how much I toiled over one piece of writing or copy, I go back and read it a year later, a month later, and I'm like, what the hell was I writing? Like, so I do think no matter how much you evolve as a writer, you're always going to feel that way. Even someone like you that's written bestsellers,
one of actually two. I think 2 of your rules in the book, you touch on your 12 rules for life, right? And there's some overlap between your rules and my rules. I think you write every morning for 60 minutes. I do the same. And I find what Drew just said, you know what I mean? Like, it helps me get tighter, but still, inevitably, like, I look at stuff that I wrote last year and I'm like, wow, this could be so much tighter, you know?
But that it should be, right? Like, it'd be like you looking at your jujitsu a year ago and going, oh my God, what was I thinking trying to do that in that position? And that's what evolution is supposed to be. I'm sure, I like to tease Bedros when I spoke at BK Live, the first one. I showed a picture of him from 2007, one of his first YouTube videos, right? And he looked like a terrorist, because that's when he shaved his head. And I mean, he looks so much different now. But we all do those things, and we all evolve. And you can't regret the past, but you can only learn from it.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into my favorite chapter of the book, which is, I believe, 13, harnessing the power of positive people in your life. This is
everything.
Yeah, so obviously that speaks to a lot of what we do here at Fuel Hunt. When we started Fuel Hunt, it was a community. It was literally about bringing together not just positive people, but people of progress. Like you said, evolving people together to change society, change the world. So chapter 13 hit me there. It also hit me because you discuss a bit about how you quit drinking accountability, and then you kind of got into like finding your tribe and the power of three. So let's like dive into 13 a
Sure,
little
man.
bit selfishly if we could.
Yeah, absolutely.
And start, maybe let's start with how you quit drinking and like how accountability played a role in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was a classic binge drinker, like pick any college movie where, people get super drunk and do stupid things. And that was me, and fortunately it was all, safe, and I never really got into any trouble from it. But it was a habit that didn't serve me for a long time after I should have quit. And so what did I do? I essentially, in order to quit any bad habit, you must, as James Clear says, put a ton of friction in the way, make it as hard as possible to do. So removing alcohol from your environment was one of the first things. Fortunately, I was a weekend binge drinker. I didn't have any alcohol in the house, but that's what you would have to do. And then the second thing I did was I eliminated the toxic people from my social circle. I still have friends to this day. Well, my friends from back then are still going to the same bars today as I went to when I was 25. I know that they still go, not as frequently, but they still do. And I just couldn't hang around those people. But then there was, there's this trend out there online that I absolutely hate, which is, go dark and cut off all these people. And I just hate that because we're meant to be social people. Humans are meant to be social and around good people. So you shouldn't cut everyone out of your life. And I had a lot of good friends who drank, weren't bad people, and I wanted to spend time with them. So all I did was meet those people in new environments that were non-drinking, hiking. I didn't do jiu-jitsu back then, but that would have been good. But the weight room, playing golf, anything on a Saturday morning where I could connect with people, and then they could go drink and I would find something else to do. And so that elimination was very key. The next thing is better planning and preparation. So whenever you leave a bad habit, there's a void. And if you don't fill that void with something else, then you will get sucked back into the void and do the bad habit. So I started, doing that planning and preparation to meet people in good environments. And then finally, the thing that really lifted me up was the connection. When I met people who also didn't drink, Bedros never really drank. We got drunk once in Miami, 2009, I think. But other than that, we never really had more than one drink together. And okay, so now I'm around this guy who doesn't drink, and then we meet other people like Sharon Sarvatza, no drinking. And this guy's super successful. He's funny. You can hang out with the guy. And all that time, as I get away from the drinking, I start to increase and change my identity to a non-drinker, which then allows me to operate and have fun in drinking environments. So you could put me now back in the toxic environment, and I wouldn't drink, because my identity is I'm not a drinker. Sure. Therefore, I can be anywhere. I don't need any discipline now to stay away from alcohol because I'm not a drinker. The end.
Yeah. You had that identity shift. It's so important to call out that cliche that floats around with like cutting off your entire social circle and just like
I hate it so
like
much.
Chainsaw the people in your life. I do too. I feel like it's like a really surface level strategy that actually kind of pulls you to the dark side of discipline. It actually makes it harder.
Honestly, I think it's a great recipe for creating school shooters is what it is.
Yeah.
And the only people that say it are like 25-year-olds who, they run these little accounts and they've never like actually lived life, and maybe they have no friends. So, but anybody who's got a good collection of friends knows that the more people you know, the easier everything in life is.
Yeah. You have to audit and edit the relationships, and the folks in your circle that don't respond well to that, then maybe there's a more drastic change with them. But most people love you, want the best for you, and are reasonable and can understand, hey, look, we can go hike, but we're not going to go to the bar.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think when you're hanging out with these people, it's also important to like be okay with being weird. You know what I mean? Like when I started to stop drinking, I remember I was in my old job in sales, and I would just not go to the happy hours. They'd be like, oh, like, what are you doing? Like going home to like be with your family? But I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Like,
yeah, right.
But when you're in these normal, quote unquote, normal social circles or doing things that are considered normal, like happy hour and drinking, like when you start to want differently or think differently or do differently, you're going to have friction, like you say. Like, so being okay with being called weird or perceived as weird is definitely a key component.
It is
to
key,
that
and
stuff.
so let's reframe that because people will get that and they'll understand it, and some of it will be like, yeah, I'm no problem with this, but some people listening will go, yeah, I want that, but they are like, but I don't want to be weird. Well, here's the thing: you're not being weird. You're running your own race, and you're comfortable in your own skin. So that's the exact same thing as saying that you're weird, but it's a reframe, and it is the most powerful thing. I remember when I was a personal trainer 25 years ago. I trained this guy who was a CEO of a retail company, and his brother was a lawyer in downtown Toronto, which is kind of like New York. They had this financial area. So 25 years ago, this lawyer lived in this really rich part of Toronto and then biked downtown to the financial district to be a lawyer, which was unheard of at the time because 25 years ago nobody, biked, right? Now it's probably normal. So what he said about his brother was, he said, my brother is so comfortable in his own skin, and I want to be that. Me. I want to be comfortable in my own skin. And I wasn't, I was transitioning, but I didn't. I binge drank with my friends because I wasn't strong enough to be comfortable in my own skin. Eventually, I became comfortable and strong enough to be comfortable in my own skin. But that was like one of my goals from day one, because it's also a level of freedom. You're a free person when you can think for yourself and act for yourself. You're not weird. You're a free person, which is what everybody wants to be. And then the final thing I will say about this is that for every for you, maybe there's 10 people in that group, right, that are going to happy hour. And for every person like you who actually opts out or, doesn't partake in the drinking, there's 4 other people in that group that want to be the same as you, but they don't have the courage to do it.
Exactly.
And what I did is I did that around my friends. And over the last, 20 years, it was, it's not really happening now because, people are either there or they're not. But when in the first couple of years after I started doing that, more and more people started coming to my dark side, right? Of
Yes.
I'm not doing that. And now some of my friends are healthier than I am, who used to be bigger binge drinkers than I was back then. So you need to be that leader, the eagle in the group, and people will come.
Absolutely. I took a page in January 2024. I took a page out of your book, literally and figuratively, and I put out to the community that I was not going to drink. I was done for a year, I said. So for this year. So I was still kind of teetering, right? I was like, but for this year, I'm not going to drink. It ended up being a commitment that I've now made for life, right?
Yeah.
Never drinking again. And it is amazing how many people in the community came forward and said, you know what, I'm going to do this too. You know, that we're just waiting in the wings kind of to make that commitment as well. As soon as they saw somebody that they knew, trusted, liked, making a pledge to be comfortable in his own skin. It's so important.
Yeah. And you know what I found with the whole drinking thing is for probably 3 years, I was like a once a month, 1 to 2 drinks.
Yep.
And I just found it's easier to be 100% out than 99% out. And I read that quote right when I quit for good. And I was like, it is true, because, if you go a long time without drinking, like if you drink like once a month, right? And then you have a drink, man, it hits you. And you're like, 1 drink? I used to drink like 6 beers in an hour, and you hit 1 drink and your entire day is ruined. So it's like, what is the point of this? Like, it's horrible. And you got a whole lot more on the line now. So goodbye to it. And I am not judging people who drink. If you want to drink and it serves you and you're okay with it and there is no harm that comes of it, you go on and do it. But if you're like, yeah, it doesn't serve me, and my Aura ring tells me that, then I think maybe for like 2 weeks I went out a couple times and I was like, man, it'd be nice to order a drink, and then that was it. And
It
now,
just disappears. Yeah.
now it has disappeared completely.
Yeah. It
Craig,
disappears.
were you a family man when you stopped drinking, or was it pre-family?
That was before our first kid.
Okay.
So it was, I remember the day I decided to go 100%. So my wife quit drinking in March 2020, like basically a few months after I met her. And I would have a drink once in a while. Obviously, the only person I really spent time with was her. So I was like, wasn't really drinking that much. But then I went out with Jason Capital, a friend of Bedros's and mine. I went out with him and his wife and I took my wife out. And we went out for dinner in Newport Beach in November of 2021, right before we moved to Mexico to have our kid, our first kid. And I had one drink, and then I had a horrible sleep. It was actually, we were staying in Huntington Beach, and it was during Santa Ana winds, because we went to Lake Bedros's for Thanksgiving a couple days later, and the winds were horrible. So I slept horrible because of that. I slept horrible because of the booze. The next day, I felt like I had had 12 beers the night before, and I was like, I'm done. And that was when I just went all in on it.
Yeah, I was gonna, because for me, I'm a little bit younger, but in 2019 I stopped because I had my wife and I had our son young. We were like 24, 25. It was my best friend's wedding, and I came home that night, and I was like throwing up in the sink, and my son was asleep in the bedroom, and I was like, if my son walked out right now and saw his dad like throwing up in the sink, like what would he think? Like what kind of father am I? So I just, after that night, I just stopped, and I found that it was a lot easier when you have those children or a child, like looking up to you as a leader and a role model, that it might be easier to let it go.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can leverage, right, as reasons why. And, some people will need a little bit more support to it. But being in that community, man, and saying, you burn the boats, you say, hey, I'm not drinking this month, this year, whatever. Like, when you say it, now your integrity kicks in, and you're not going to be the type of person to go back on it, which is why the power of connection is so important. Yeah. And on the flip side, what we talk about a lot is you can't get stuck on lonely entrepreneur island or, lonely high performer island, which is what happens in between events. And, we have people come to our events, they get all fired up. They're all business owners that come to our events. They get fired up. They see their potential. They see everybody else succeeding, and they get great information. And then they go home, and it's just this decay, because some of them live in like Eastern Tennessee. And I love Tennessee. I'm not knocking Tennessee. I'm just saying, if you live in Eastern Tennessee in a city of 20, 30,000 people, there's not a lot of people like you in that town. And it's easy to get dragged down. I'm from a town of 30,000 people in Canada, where, it's mostly factories. I worked at the factories. I know those people. And if I lived in that town, even if I had the biggest house in that town, and I knew the 2 or 3 other really good entrepreneurs in that town, I'm going to revert to the median, right? I'm going to go back to the average pretty quick. So that's why you have to be in the community all the time to keep getting up.
That's one of the positives of technology and social media nowadays. People drag it through the mud, and I've been guilty of doing that sometimes. But you know what? There's a massive bright side, and that's the fact that you can stay connected with the right people. It is your choice. You can stay connected with the right people online all the time.
And it is research proven. It's research proven to be as effective as in person. So it is absolutely 100%.
Which you mentioned in the book, you know what I mean? And that's what the Fuel One community has done for so many. Because even if you're in a big city, right, of 100,000 people, you can still have that same decay and that same disappointment and feeling. Because your circle or the people you interact with every day aren't on the same path, and don't have the habits that you need or you want. So, being able to turn to a community like Fuel Hunt or Early to Rise or, your communities, it's crucial nowadays. Crucial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk. You opened chapter 13 with a Jim Rohn quote. He's the GOAT, big Jim Rohn fan about, being the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. I agree. I believe towards the end of the chapter, you closed the chapter with power of 3. So not really the 5 people that you spend time with, but the power of 3. So let's talk about the power of 3, because I think that that's a really practical, tactical tool that people can use in their daily lives to stay accountable and replace bad habits with good habits.
Yeah. So the power of 3 is actually just 3 questions. And I actually started building an app. I spent over $100,000 trying to build an app to do this, and it failed. Here's a business lesson. It failed because I did not do the market research. Okay, so I'm not an app. Interesting enough, I don't use apps. Like, my whole goal in life is to have, what do I have on the front of my phone? I have like maybe 7 apps on my phone, and I don't want to add any more. So I don't use them. and now I'm going to go and try and build one. And I didn't do the research behind other accountability apps that are out there. And I foolishly threw away about $100,000 before I killed the project and said, I'm not bleeding anymore. But the whole thing of the power of three is simply to have three accountability questions. And I started doing this with some of my coaching clients probably about 6 years ago who were really struggling with something. So it could have been as simple as getting up on time. It could have been, writing 500 words. It could have been, doing an amount of outreach or making an amount of videos, or maybe some personal habit like drinking or whatever. And we keep it simple. It's three questions customized to your situation. So let's say Joey has a hard time getting up without snoozing. So we say, Joey, every single day at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're going to text me, did I get up on time? Did I hit snooze? And did I get to bed on time? If not, why not? So did I get up on time? If not, why not? Did I hit snooze? If not, why not? Did I get to bed on time? If not, why not? Because those are like the three questions that are critical to this one little goal. And it's a direct text or WhatsApp or Instagram message between the coach and the client in our business. And it's the accountability somebody needs. But the key is the if not, why not? Because now it's up to you to go, well, you know what? I didn't get up on time because I didn't get to bed on time. And I didn't get to bed on time because I was watching Netflix. Okay, so now we've identified the problem. So now we can reverse engineer. How do we stop watching Netflix so much? All right, so let's set up the Opal app on your phone, or that's a really great app to stop you from accessing your phone. Maybe we can. We actually have coaching clients who their assistant goes into their Netflix every Sunday night and changes the password and doesn't send the password back to the person until Friday.
Yeah.
I've had another client who had his assistant do the same to their Gmail every morning and then send the password back at 5 o'clock at night. Sometimes you have to go to extreme measures to get control of the thing.
Yep.
And so this can be used for anything. If it's like, did you go to the gym, or some nutrition, something like whatever it is that the person, everyone listening.
Yep.
If there's something you're struggling with, you find someone you deeply do not want to disappoint. You say, hey, can I do this little accountability with you? Maybe it's somebody in the community, and you have an accountability partner, and you got to show up every single day at a certain time and tell them, did I do the thing or did I not do the thing? And if I screwed up, why did I screw up? All right. So now we can then unpack how we don't screw up in the future. And this is how you get, the old cliche, 1% better every day. That's it.
For sure.
And over time, like you get to the point where you have perfect scores every day. It's like, okay, it's either time to move on from this, or it's time to switch to like, what's the next level 10 problem we got to fix?
Sure. Yeah, we do on Wednesday evenings, we do small group accountability in Fuel Hunt Rise, which is like our private community, Fuel Hunt community. And we ask that question, if not, why not, in there. And it is the most powerful question. Without that question, what happens is if you didn't do what you said you were going to do last week, right? What typically would happen is it would get glossed over because they would say, or we would say, well, you did do a lot of other stuff. So let's just like forgive it type of thing. But the if not, why not, like you said, it helps you follow that thread back to the problem, like all the time. And that's the root of the whole thing. You know what I mean? So
most of the stuff I do is really just, and most of the stuff for success is really just reverse engineering it. First of all, figuring out what you really want, and then reverse engineer how to get it. And that's it. And that's what success is. The
craziest thing, I was a programmer for much of my career. And I started programming when I was young, like around 11 years old. And the way I learned how to program was by decompiling other software.
Okay.
So the first piece.
So that's like taking an engine, taking it apart, right?
Exactly. Reverse engineering. And I learned that at such a young age. The first piece of software I ever wrote was a virus scanner. I don't know if you remember those from back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
McAfee virus scanner.
Yeah, McAfee.
I reverse engineered that, and then I wrote my own. And that skill of decompiling, understanding, and then creating my own is something that like I'm super grateful for, because that is a lesson that I've applied to life, business, relationships, everything. It's so valuable. So valuable.
That's very cool.
All right, let's we covered chapter 13. Drew, you have any questions? I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you.
No, sir.
All right, okay, I got you. So let's respect your time here, Craig. Let's talk about your 12 rules for life. You touch on those in the book. I alluded to them earlier. Two of them really resonate with me at this juncture of my life. Writing, like I mentioned, every morning for 60 minutes. I do that, sometimes longer. And also, probably not a surprise to the community, the second rule you have is writing with honesty and feeling, I think, is the other one. That also resonates with me because in the beginning of our journey with Fuel Hunt, I was a bit preoccupied by people's opinions in my writing.
Sure.
And now I no longer am. So those two rules resonate, but I'm not going to ask you to go through all 12 of your rules, even though all 12 of them are valuable. Maybe you could pick one or two that were really needle movers for you in your life and share them with the community.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I want to do is, first of all, just explain, like, what the heck are we talking about here? And so in 2011, I went for a run or did some intervals or something on Easter Sunday. And as I was running, I thought, you know what, man, I operate by a system. Because a lot of people would always say, oh, what would Craig do in this situation? So I thought, well, what is my system? So I came back in, and I remember doing this because my mom came home from church, and I was sitting at the kitchen table visiting her on Easter Sunday. And I was sitting there writing, and I just wrote these 12 statements out, which, again, this is 2011, and I don't really look at them. But I looked at them for this book, and I was like, oh, yeah, man, I do exactly that. And that's what I'm looking for here, that everybody has these core values inside of them by which they operate. And it's like your iPhone can do amazing things because it has an operating system. That if this, then that, it can, and that's how you call Tokyo, right? And so I put together these 12 rules, and coincidentally, it's like right around the time that I think Jordan Peterson wrote his book 12 Rules for Life or something. But mine, I've never read the book, honestly, and I don't know what his rules are, but these are my rules. And they are stuff that should be timeless and not change. So the ones that really stand out to me are like how I want to be. I wrote an identity statement, essentially, that I'm a polite and courteous British gentleman. I don't get into drama. I don't get into conflict. If I harm somebody, I apologize, and that's it. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's fairly long. And that was part of my identity shift and change from having the introverted tendencies that I had. When I met Bedros, I had a lot of very introverted tendencies, and I don't call myself an introvert because I don't like the label and putting myself in a box. But by watching Bedros, who also admits to introverted tendencies, but he's a very California cool guy. And, I saw how he treated people, that when we would walk into our mastermind meeting, there'd be like 20 people in there, and he would greet them all. And meanwhile, I just kind of wanted to go to my seat and let's get going sort of thing. But that's not what people want. And so eventually over the years, I just adopted a lot of his behaviors. And then I adopted this identity of like, this is how I want to be. So what do most people do when they go into an elevator? They open up their phone, they look at the floor. When I get into an elevator, as part of this identity, is I don't bring out my phone, and I greet every person that comes into the elevator. And it's not super comfortable for me, and it's not super comfortable for the other person in most cases either, unless they're like an old lady and then they just want to chat with you for like the rest of your life. But so that's like one that's really important. And there's another one, I think it's 7. There's 2 parts to 7, and one of the parts says it will all be over soon, the good and the bad. And most people have heard that it'll be over soon, the bad part. And so you got to persevere for it, through it. And listen, I think we all get that. Fuel Hunt folks are tough, mentally tough, physically tough. But you also have to flip it and understand that the good will be over soon.
Yeah.
And therefore, you must, hold on to the moments, be present, be grateful. Like, I got 3 kids under 3. Eventually they'll be 30.
Yeah.
And they won't be. It's a wonderful time, so I built my life around spending as much time as possible with them. So it will all be over soon. And for those Fuel Hunt members who are going through a season of life where it's a winter, and I understand, I've been there in many ways, understand that spring will come. And for those of you that are going through like just the absolute best part of your life, good, enjoy it, make the most of it. Life is life, and things may or may not change soon, but make the most of what you have right now.
Yeah. I don't think people, because sometimes it can be scary, they don't want to embrace the impermanence of things, the good, you know what I mean? It can be
Yeah.
scary, but it's a fact of life. We mentioned Jim Rohn earlier, and I believe he has a book, but I know he has a lecture on the seasons. And I encountered that like way early in my life, in my early 20s, I think it was. And he spoke about the seasons and how winters come and
Yep.
they go. So do summers. The good times.
Yeah.
So it's very important. I think the first half of that rule is like I think it's nothing matters maybe.
Yeah, it's something like that,
matters,
and it really, everything matters, but nothing matters in the way that things will come and go, people will come and go in your life, and yes, they matter, but what matters the most is that you stay true to yourself.
Yeah. We have, obviously, in our community, the rules of the few. We have 11. We're one shy of your 12. But we have
12 is a lot. It really shouldn't have been so many.
So, well, I think they're yours. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And there's as many as there need to be. But I am moving in that direction, right? So we have 11 rules of the few. And
Good.
the way that I look at them for the community are really like a guide, because I feel like thinking nowadays is a lost art to some degree. People
Sure.
don't think for themselves. They don't think freely. So they're really, the way I look at them is they're a guide, and they're a guide for you building your daily choices. At least that's the way when I wrote the rules of the few, I intended them, and out of the rules of the few kind of came my 3 daily choices that I live by, and that's kind of like my North Star.
Yeah.
And mine are pretty simple, like as you probably would expect. Like I'm a fan of being, to the point. So it's create more than you consume, embrace more than you escape, and love more than you loathe. And they're
that's good.
they're the 3 things that I judge myself by on a daily basis. When I do my planning for the next day, I say, look, did I do these 3 things? Did all of my choices and my actions throughout the day reflect these 3 core choices that I want to make for, a great life, basically. So do you find yourself revisiting your rules on a daily basis? And do you feel like they definitely drive your choices, but do you see yourself making like very common choices day in and day out that keep you going?
Yeah, and the whole point of the rules is to eliminate the decision fatigue, right? It's kind of like a diet does, So a diet, if I'm on a keto diet, I don't have to sit there and think, can I have the donut today or not? No, it's just not on the plan, right? It's the standard. And so much of the effortless discipline systems, the standards, the identity, they're there to take away from the millions of decisions we have to make. Because if we had to make that, all the decisions and not have standards, you'd be exhausted by the time it got around to the really important decisions. So for me, it's those rules that I haven't revisited in a long time because they are so ingrained in me. And the most important thing is that I make all the decisions around the core values, which is the freedom for my family. And so is this moving my family towards more freedom? Is it making sure that we have freedom? And if I take this meeting, is it taking me away from having freedom? Like, because you can meeting yourself into a prison.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty ruthless with, I have every Friday, like in a bit, I'm on West Coast time. So a little bit later this afternoon, I will go through my calendar and cut stuff. And it will require me apologizing to people and saying, I'm sorry, I know I committed to this meeting in a couple of weeks, but it doesn't fit. I can't do it. And I will do that because I have to, I'm like a wild horse. I will say yes to too much stuff. And I have to constantly call the calendar. And I think that's a very important thing for people to do because it gives you more freedom to work on what matters. So I'm always kind of, the rules, the systems, they're all there as a decision filter so that you make the right decisions, and also for when you're not sure to go back, review it, and run it through the filter again.
For sure. When in Perfect Day Formula, you talk about meetings, right? You spend a little bit of time on meetings, and I remember reading that when it came out and trying to spread that in my corporate days. And it was not a popular thought back in the days with meetings. Less meetings, you know what I mean, was not popular. Not popular.
Well, yeah, not until you're running your own business. Then it's going to be very popular.
Yeah, exactly. Drew,
But back to the writing of the book thing, there was a lot of people who said this is really out of place in this book, and as I look back, they were probably right. But that was a darling that probably should have been killed. Yeah. But there were probably a few people that did get a lot from it. But in general, that didn't belong in the book, and it made it in. So that's the kind of thing that you look back and go, little out. It's just out of the flow. It's not out of the belief. It's just.
I think you're right. It's out of the flow. It's not that it lacks value. Like that's what we found when B came in and said, look, guys, you got to kill your darlings. Like you got to get rid of these designs and these badges. Like they meant something to people in our community. We still have people to this day, darlings that we killed. They're like, is the fire tee ever coming back? It's my favorite tee. I just last week I got a picture of somebody held it up on Instagram and sent it over. So there's value in those things.
Well, you should have bought 2 of them.
Yeah, exactly. We had 2 colors.
No, that should be your new fuel hunt core value. Always buy 2.
Buy 2 everything.
Yeah.
But
we were just talking yesterday about when we release something, we release it once and that's it. So I mean, if you're listening to this podcast,
right, you got to buy 2. Man.
Yeah, buy 2. What, Drew? I think you had something that you wanted to say. Maybe with meetings.
It's just interesting to see people that I've looked up to, like Craig and Aaron Hine, who we just had on the show, like coming up.
Nice.
In my days, have similar messages and mantras for people. But I listened to him on a podcast maybe 10 years ago when I was working with him in my corporate days. But he said, when you say yes to one thing, you say no to something else.
Darn right, man.
So so applicable to your meetings and the meeting strategy, because if you say yes to one meeting, you're saying no to your family, essentially.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
The one thing I said this one thing to years and years ago when Bedros and I were coaching, fitness business owners trying to make it online, and I said, every time you read an email newsletter from somebody, you're stealing that time from your kids. Mm-hmm. And I said this to a guy who had 5 kids, and he's like, oh man, because we do, we're reading newsletters from people we'll never meet, and you get one newsletter, you only need one newsletter. You're like scrolling through and watching Instagram videos. You're stealing that time from somebody that matters more. And it's human nature, and these things are designed to be addictive to us. But just understand that if you're doing something, you're taking that time from something else that you could be doing, such as mobility work, or it's all the type of stuff that we know we should be doing. So just be ruthless with your time. That's where you have to be the most ruthless and selfish with anything in your life, is with your time, because if you are ruthless and selfish with your time, you can be a more generous person. Noodle on that one.
For sure.
And that's I'm a big, I don't know where you stand on this, Craig, but I'm a big do not disturb mode person, and it's very unpopular with family and friends, but that wildly popular with the people I'm spending my time with at the time, because like when I'm with my family or I go to jiu-jitsu or I'm out with friends, like I don't have my phone checking every 5 seconds. Like I step on the mats for the hour, 2 hours I'm there, my phone's in the locker room. And I think we've gotten so far away from just staying focused or on what we're doing at the time, whether it's spending time with people, working. We're easily distracted nowadays.
Well, absolutely. And so that phone is a hindrance. It's a double-edged sword for sure. I actually stopped taking my phone when I went to the gym, but my wife made me take it. She said, in case I have to get a hold of you. But I do leave it in the locker room as well. And I cannot believe what people do with their phones in the gym. They're doing leg curls and texting at the same time. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And setting their phones up to film every repetition. It's ridiculous. It's so far gone that I think I'm pretty sure soon gyms will go the other way and say you can't bring your phone in here, because it's ridiculous. Yep. And maybe there's a way that they can listen to their music another way, but it distracts you from the thing. I don't take my phone out on date night at all, even if I want to film something. I just use my wife's phone if I want to take a picture of the food or something. And I just try and go, you know what? I grew up in the 80s and 90s with no phone, because I'm almost Bedros' age. I'm almost as old as that old man. And I've lived without a phone, and I lived a great life without a phone. So I'm trying to go back as much as possible. That's why I don't have the apps. That's
I'm very
why
grateful
I don't take the phone.
for technology and such, but I think we've technology too far. Like the landline, like when you didn't want to answer the phone to just be with your family at home, you just took the the landline
Oh, yeah.
off the hook, and then you
Yeah.
put it up like no one could
Yeah.
get through to you. And it was like, okay, it was no big deal.
Right. Oh, yeah,
Um,
the phone would ring. I remember like trying to call my best friend that I've had since I was 6 years old. I'd let the phone ring 40 times. Like maybe he's going to answer in the next one. But his mom probably unplugged it because she was a single mom and worked in a factory and probably didn't want anybody bothering her.
Yep.
And I'm guilty of it too. Like when I'm in the zone and I need a response from someone quick. I'm like, I sit there. I'm like, okay, maybe they'll answer the next. Like hopefully they're a distracted person and they'll answer me right away.
I'm on your path, Craig. Like I'm doing the app audit. I only have certain apps on my phone, and there's a story that I heard recently about an entrepreneur. I believe maybe Tequila. I don't know, billionaire. I'm not sure exactly who it was, and I'm not sure if there's anything that you could really learn positive from him other than this. So this isn't an endorsement, but he does business by landline and fax machine. That's where I'm trying to get.
Yeah, there's a guy famous in the marketing world, Dan Kennedy, who says he's never had a cell phone. And,
Okay. Yeah,
and,
big Dan Kennedy fan.
and he makes people send faxes to him. Yeah. Now here's the thing: if you are only, I actually use this in a training where I said, if your inbox is full, it's your fault, because if that means you probably send a lot of emails that shouldn't be sent, and so treat every email that you send as a fax. Think that, and before you hit send, you had to actually get up, print out the thing, walk over to a thing, and send it. Would you send this email? And in most cases, you probably wouldn't send the email, especially like a thank you. No, you're welcome. Like you get in this thank you, you're welcome 9 email thread, and it's such a waste of time. Just stop sending the emails. People forget that they even emailed you. So that fax thing can be a beneficial mindset.
Now I'm regretting the thank you email I sent to Linda this morning. So
well, hey, it's not me. You can send her all the emails you want. That's her job.
That's funny. All right, man. Let's bring this in for a landing here. Drew, do you have a lightning round for Craig? If you don't,
I do. Craig, three quick questions, 3 quick answers. All right. Favorite quote that you live by?
I would say this is my quote. Everything in life is easier when you know more good people.
Amen to that.
Yeah, and I truly live by it.
Most important part of discipline?
Systems, man. Systems. If you have systems, you don't need discipline.
And finally, I think I know the answer already, but the best morning routine.
Get up and go to work.
Yeah, for sure.
Get up and chase your dreams and chomp the tail of the dreams and
go do.
Yeah, man.
Go do. Yeah, that's right. All right, Craig. Where can the community find you, and where can the community get your new book, The Dark Side of Discipline?
Well, I wish they could find me at your jiu-jitsu tournament, but they won't find me there.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I was going to say not yet.
Instagram at Real Craig Ballantyne. Hit me up there. I'm now using LinkedIn, so if anybody loves LinkedIn, they can find me there too. And then the new book is available at darksideofdiscipline.com, or go to Amazon. All the formats, the audiobook, ebook, hard copy, and paperback are all available there. And we just hit a bestseller status in small business books or something. So
let's go.
Yeah, we're climbing the ranks, man.
Let's go. Congratulations. All right, I'll leave the few with a reminder here. Always choose hard work over handouts. Always choose effort over entitlement. Remember, no one owns you. No one owes you. You're one of the few. Now let's hunt.